There is a glass office on the 14th floor of a building in Lagos where a man once sat alone, surrounded by silence louder than any accusation. His nameplate had been removed that morning, his computer access revoked, his phone filled with messages he could not bring himself to read. Outside the window, the city moved as it always had, indifferent, relentless, alive. But inside that room, time had stopped. He had climbed so high, he had wanted it so desperately, and now in a single morning, it was gone. Not just the position, not just the salary, something far more valuable had been taken, something he had thrown away with his own hands before anyone else could. His brother would not answer his calls. Let us go back. Let us understand how a man can lose everything while believing he was winning. The tech company was called Agropex Solutions, and it occupied 3 floors of a steel and glass tower in Victoria Island. It was not the largest company in Lagos, but it was growing, and growth created opportunity. Opportunity created hunger. Every morning, young men and women arrived in pressed shirts and polished shoes, carrying laptops like sacred texts. They spoke in the language of disruption and innovation, of market share and quarterly projections. The air conditioning hummed, the coffee machine gurgled, keyboards clicked in rhythm. But beneath the modern surface, the company operated by old rules. Respect was everything. Your word was your bond. If you took credit for another person's work, it would be noticed. Perhaps not immediately, but eventually. The senior managers had built their careers over decades. They remembered everything. They watched everything. There was a code, unwritten but understood. Excellence was rewarded, but integrity was non-negotiable. You could be brilliant and fail. You could be average and rise, but if you were dishonest, the system would expel you, slowly or swiftly, but certainly. The CEO, Mr. Adeyemi, was a quiet man who rarely raised his voice, but when he spoke, rooms fell silent. He had a way of looking at people that made them feel seen entirely, their potential and their character both laid bare. He believed in meritocracy, but he believed in something else too, that talent without character was a house built on sand. David and Michael Okoronko had joined Agripex Solutions within a year of each other. David, the elder by 3 years, had arrived first. He was methodical, patient, thoughtful in his work. He did not speak often in meetings, but when he did, his words carried weight. He built systems that lasted. He documented everything. He trained junior staff without resentment, believing that lifting others was part of the work. People trusted David. When a problem emerged late on a Friday evening, it was David they called. When a client grew difficult, it was David they sent to smooth the waters. He did not chase recognition. He believed that the work would speak for itself. Michael was different. He was bright, perhaps brighter than his brother in raw intellectual ability. He learned quickly, spoke confidently, and had a gift for presentation. In meetings, he could take a half-formed idea and make it sound revolutionary. Clients liked him, senior managers noticed him, but Michael was restless. He watched colleagues get promoted while he remained in place. He saw younger people leapfrog him because they had made the right impression at the right moment. He began to believe that competence was not enough, that patience was a luxury for those without ambition. He looked at David, steady, humble David, and felt something close to pity. His brother was too soft, too willing to wait, too naive to understand that the world rewarded those who seized what they wanted. Michael decided he would not make the same mistake. It began with something small. A project meeting where David suggested a new approach to client onboarding. Michael listened, nodded, said nothing. 2 days later, in a different meeting with senior management, Michael presented the same idea as his own. He used different words, added a bit of polish, but the core was David's. He was praised. The managers liked it. Michael felt the warm glow of recognition. David heard about it from a colleague. When he mentioned it to Michael, his brother apologized
Michael, I heard the
quickly,
idea you presented
too
this
quickly.
morning was the one I shared yesterday.
I'm sorry.
Yes, I'm sorry, dear.
I
It just
should
came
have
up naturally in
mentioned
the
it was your
conversation.
idea.
You know how these things go.
It just came up naturally in conversation. You know how these things go. David accepted the apology. Brothers forgive. But Michael had tasted something and he wanted more. Over the following months, the pattern repeated. Michael positioned himself to overhear David's conversations with the technical team. He read David's project notes when his brother left his desk. He learned to anticipate what David was working on and to present those innovations first, wrapped in his own confident delivery. David began to notice, but confrontation did not come naturally to him. He told himself he was imagining things. Brothers did not betray each other, not over work, not over something so small. Meanwhile, Michael began withholding information. When David asked about a client specification, Michael claimed he hadn't received it yet. When David needed access to a shared document, Michael was slow to grant permission. Small obstacles, small delays, nothing obvious enough to accuse, but enough to slow David's progress while Michael advanced. A senior position opened in the company, head of innovation. Both brothers were eligible. Michael wanted it with an intensity that surprised him. He stayed late, he worked weekends, he made sure senior managers saw him doing so. He began to speak of David's work as solid but unimaginative, never directly, just in passing, in tones of fraternal concern. David's great at execution, Michael would say, but he's not really a strategic thinker, you know? The managers listened, they watched both brothers, they took notes. 3 months before the promotion decision, the company won a major contract, a digital transformation project for a national bank. It was the largest deal in Agropex's history. The project would require flawless coordination between multiple teams. Mr. Adeyemi assigned David to lead the technical architecture and Michael to manage client relations. David threw himself into the work. He spent weeks mapping out the system requirements, identifying potential risks, building contingency plans. He documented everything in a shared project folder. Michael had access to all of it. One evening, David prepared a comprehensive report for Mr. Adeyemi outlining 3 critical security vulnerabilities in the bank's existing system and recommending solutions. The report was thorough, technical, precise, the kind of work that demonstrated not just competence but foresight. He planned to submit it the next morning. That night, Michael accessed the shared folder. He read David's report. He understood immediately how impressive it was, how it would position David as indispensable to the project. Michael opened a new document. He took David's findings, the 3 vulnerabilities, the recommended solutions, and rewrote them in his own style. He added a section on client communication strategy to make it seem more comprehensive. He changed the technical language to make it more accessible to non-technical executives. Then he emailed it to Mr. Adeyemi at 11 p.m., marking it urgent. When David arrived the next morning and submitted his report, Mr. Adeyemi's assistant told him the CEO had already received a similar analysis from Michael the night before. David sat at his desk, staring at his screen. He opened the shared folder. He checked the access logs. He saw his brother's name time-stamped at 10:47 p.m. For the first time, David felt something other than forgiveness toward his brother. He felt a cold, clear anger. But he said nothing, not yet. He needed to be certain. He needed to understand how deep this went. The promotion was announced 3 weeks later. Michael Okoronkwo, head of innovation. The company held a small celebration. Colleagues congratulated him. Michael smiled, shook hands, and gave a short speech about teamwork and excellence. He thanked David specifically for being an inspiration and a steady presence. David applauded along with everyone else. That night, Michael called his brother. "I know this might be difficult," he said. "I know you wanted this too, but I'll make sure you're taken care of. We're a team, right?" David's voice was quiet. "Yes, we're a team." After the call ended, David sat in his apartment and stared at a wall. He thought about his mother, who had raised them both after their father died. He thought about the promises they had made to each other as young men, to succeed together, to lift each other up, to honor the family name. He thought about what his brother had become. And he made a decision. He would not confront Michael. Not yet. He would watch. He would wait. He would let the truth reveal itself. Because David understood something his brother did not, that dishonesty is a house built on lies, and eventually the foundation cracks. Michael's first major initiative as head of innovation was to oversee the bank's project's implementation phase. He assembled a team, delegated tasks, and presented weekly updates to Mr. Adeyemi that emphasized progress and minimized problems. But there were problems. The security vulnerabilities David had identified, the ones Michael had claimed as his own insights, required specific technical solutions. David had designed those solutions. Michael had presented them, but Michael did not actually understand them. When the implementation team encountered complications, they brought their questions to Michael. He deflected. He told them to use their best judgment. He scheduled meetings and then rescheduled them. He created an atmosphere of confusion masked as empowerment. The team began going to David instead, quietly, after hours. David helped them because the project mattered more than his pride. But he no longer documented his solutions in the shared folders. He no longer left his insights where Michael could find them. 6 weeks into implementation, the bank security team ran a penetration test. They discovered that 2 of the critical vulnerabilities had not been properly addressed. The fixes Michael's team had implemented were superficial. They looked correct but did not function as intended. The bank threatened to cancel the contract. Mr. Adeyemi called an emergency meeting. Michael sat at the conference table surrounded by senior managers and technical leads. His confidence, so bright and certain for months, began to flicker. "Explain to me," Mr. Adeyemi said, his voice quiet, "how vulnerabilities you identified 6 months ago remain unresolved." Michael began to speak. He talked about resource constraints, about the complexity of legacy systems, about the need for adaptive timelines. The words came easily. They always had, but they rang hollow in that room. Mr. Adeyemi raised his hand. I read the original security report, the one you submitted. It was exceptionally detailed. It demonstrated deep technical understanding. But now when I ask you to explain the implementation, you speak in generalities. Michael's mouth got dry. I'd like David to join us, Mr. Adeyemi said. David entered the conference room 5 minutes later. He sat across from his brother and met his eyes once briefly before turning his attention to the CEO.
David, Mr. Adeyemi said, I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I need a direct answer. Did you write the original security vulnerability report? The room held its breath. David could have lied. He could have protected his brother. He could have chosen family over truth. But he had spent months watching Michael take credit, withhold help, and climb over him. He had watched his brother receive a promotion built on stolen work, and now he sat in a room where the company's reputation and dozens of jobs hung in the balance because Michael could not deliver what he had promised. Yes, David said, I wrote it. Michael was not fired immediately. Mr. Adeyemi was a careful man. He launched a quiet investigation. He reviewed access logs, compared documents, interviewed team members. The pattern emerged clearly. Months of appropriated ideas, withheld information, and strategic manipulation. 2 weeks later, Michael was asked to resign. He sat in that glass office on the 14th floor, surrounded by silence, and understood that he had won nothing. The title was gone, the salary was gone, but worse, far worse, was what he saw in David's eyes the last time they spoke. Not anger, not even disappointment, just a profound, immeasurable sadness. I would have helped you, David said quietly. If you had asked, I would have helped you rise. We could have done it together. Michael tried to respond, but David was already walking away. The company survived. David was promoted to head of innovation 3 months later. He rebuilt the security protocols properly. The bank contract was saved. Agrupex Solutions continued to grow. Michael found work at a smaller company in a smaller role. He was competent enough, but doors that should have opened remained closed. References that should have been glowing were merely adequate. The tech community in Lagos was smaller than he had realized. People talked. People remembered. But the deepest wound was the one no one else could see. His brother's phone number remained in his contacts. He never deleted it, but he never called it because he knew that David would answer if he did. David would listen. David would probably even forgive eventually. But Michael could not bear the weight of that forgiveness, because to accept it, he would have to truly see what he had done, not just to his career, but to the one person who had loved him without condition. Some men lose their jobs. Some lose their reputations. Michael Okoronkwo lost something that could never be recovered: his brother's trust, and with it, his own peace. In the villages, the elders say this: the thief who steals from his stranger may be caught and punished, but the thief who steals from his brother steals from himself. Because family is not just who stands beside you, it is who you are. And when you break that bond for temporary gain, you do not lose a relationship. You lose a part of your soul that no success can replace. There are many such stories in our world. Stories of ambition that forgot its purpose,
of competition that forgot its limits, of brothers who became strangers to themselves. Perhaps, if you listen closely, you will hear them too. If this story has moved you, there are many more like it waiting to be told. Subscribe to the channel for more stories, comment what you learned and where you are watching from, so you can continue listening to the wisdom passed down through generations, retold for our time.